Law is something that we face every day personally, somewhere on something, You may not use that word, but it is there. What is the basis of law? What is the basis of law? The will of the people or the will of God? This is a very fundamental question. What is the basis of law? Every nation has law. We Christians definitely believe God's revelation in nature and God's revelation in the Bible. They are the basis, the adequate, foundation upon which every law must be rested, whether it is pagan society or Christian society. The jurisprudence, what they call technically, the foundational principles of the law, they must be derived from the Bible or the nature. There's natural law and then there is the written law. So upon those two foundations, the law of the nature and the law of the Bible or the revelation, all human laws must be made. William Blackstone was a great, lawyer and a great professor of jurisprudence. He made this statement that upon these two foundations, the law of nature and the law of revelation, the Bible, depend all human laws. The Bible provides us guidelines for all areas where law needs to be made. The Christian concept of law consists both natural and biblical law. They originate in the character of God's righteousness and God's love. You can take Indian Penal Code, IPC. There are many provisions concerning every aspect. They all go back to the Bible. The Roman jurisprudence, they call it. The Roman jurisprudence is derived from the Bible. The Roman jurisprudence solely derived from the Bible. Murder or laws governing murder or adultery or theft, anything, marriage, everything. It comes. Now, sinful man, what he has done, as man's sinfulness begin to be expressed more publicly, he begins to make this encroachment upon the jurisprudence so that he will bring more of the modernism and secularism into it. He slowly wanted to encroach upon that foundational principles and replace it by secular humanism. Secular humanism. And that's the problem with all the laws we have, Today actually who makes the law is a big question. Is the parliament and the legislative assemblies make the law, or really the Supreme Court and finally make the law? The courts are not lawmakers, they are law interpreters. They are there to interpret the law. The enforcement of the law is by the executive branch, the police and the Home Department and all that. The courts have to interpret whether this particular act comes under the provisions of the law, how it applies. But now they have gone beyond that. Laws are enacted and made by this the judiciary. Judiciary will tell, and then accordingly the legislature will make the law. But the judiciary will, their interpretations. So this is never meant to be. This is never. See, that's all because of when we have judges who are not necessarily people who believe in God, they are atheistic, and simply humanistic, secularly humanistic, that's all they could do. That's all they could do. So homosexuality is legalized. You know, there was a time where adultery was a sin in no more. Court said that two mature people, doing things privately by mutual consent cannot be an offense. Whether they married or not is not important. Well, that's almost, it's not an interpretation of the law. It is making a new law. Making a new law. That sort of thing should never be there. So everywhere you can see that all over the world that, the secular man who is a sinner, who doesn't like God or the Bible, even he doesn't like the natural laws. Lot of that one is even, abused. People do all those things. Today, animals and trees have more rights than human beings. This is true. You can kill a man with less consequences than cut a tree. You can shoot at a man with much less consequences than shooting at a deer or a wild animal. Why? What happened to our society? The legal system. The basics and the foundations of the legal system are cracking. Not accidentally, knowingly. Because they wanted to take away our society, our legal system completely from any attachment to the Bible and the Roman jurisprudence which derived from the Bible. They wanted to bring it totally secular, irreligious. That's what they want. If this trend will continue, we will be very uncomfortable in a very short time. Even now we are uncomfortable. Those who at least know the Bible, they are very uncomfortable. God established the human government. The rule of law primarily is established by God to check, man's sinful nature, acting boldly so that life will be uncomfortable, will be difficult. That's why. In theocracy, God executed the justice directly. But now, God has delegated this to man. But delegation is always with the definite restrictions and permissions, sanctions. They are called legal sanctions. I'd like you to turn to Romans chapter 13. A great passage on this. Even believers, I'm talking about evangelical Christians, they act contrary to Romans chapter 13, and some of them say that I don't believe it anymore. Let us read that chapter.
Verse 1?
From verse 1, we will read up to verse 11.
Every person is to be in subjection to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. Therefore, whoever resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God, and they who have opposed will receive condemnation upon themselves. For rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Do what is good, and you will have grace from the same. For it is a minister of God to you for good. But if you do what is evil, be afraid. For it does not bear sword for nothing, for it is a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath on the one who practices evil. Therefore it is necessary to be in subjection not only because of wrath but also for conscience sake. For because of this you also pay taxes, for rulers are servants of God, devoting themselves to this very thing. Render to all what is due to them, tax to whom tax is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. Owe nothing to anything except to love one another, for he loves his neighbor has fulfilled the law. For this, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet. And if there is any other commandment, it is summed up in the same. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfillment of law. Do this knowing the time, that is, it is already the hour for you to awaken up from sleep. For now salvation is nearer to us than when we believe.
Let's turn again to 1 Peter chapter 2. 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 13 and 13 and 14. First Peter chapter 2 verse 13 and 14.
Submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether to a king as the one in authority, or to governors as sent by him for the punishment of evildoers and the praise of those who do right.
Right. So Romans chapter 13 is very basic passage. It talks about the human government. Human government at all levels. Starts with a very strong statement, let every soul be subject unto the higher powers. That every soul. I mean, nobody is exempted from submitting to the higher authority. Whatever is higher authority. Whether it is husband or wife, parents over children, teachers over students, government over the people, whatever it may be. Submission to the authority is mandatory. That's the biblical law. That's the law. So anybody who disobey, for the reason is also given. What is the reason? For there is no power but of God. If anybody is holding legally power, he got that power from God. If I as a father has power over my children, it is not a power that I have, taken it over by myself. It is given to me by God. So if my children do not obey me, they are all grown up, therefore the instruction, children obey your parents, does not apply to them. Now it is honor your parents. That's what applies to them. But there was a time they were under my protection, and they were my wards, and they were supposed to obey. Absolutely. I have to be gracious knowing their children. I have to be loving and all that. But from their part, what was expected is obey. And I must be conscious of the fact that the authority that I have is from God, so I should not misuse it, abuse it. So this is a very clear commandment. There is no power but of God. Then said, the powers that be are ordained of God. This is an ordinance of God. This is an ordinance. That's where we may say that is delegated by God. Is delegated. The authority absolutely rests in God, but that absolute power for its exercise is delegated to parents, to husbands, to teachers, to government, and all these people, the elders and all those things. So anybody who is challenging the authority that God has ordained, they are challenging God. So this delegation is a big principle. It's good to study about it. I don't have authority in myself. God has the authority. But God has delegated that authority to me to exercise it over my children. Because I happen to be father. That's my privilege or my responsibility. And I have to be conscious of it, the nature. This is not authority that I possess in myself so that I could do anything I want. No. I am limited. Because it's delegated, he who delegated told me the extent of the authority, the purpose of the authority, the manner of execution of the authority, everything is stated. I cannot break any one of them. But those who are under authority, when they challenge authority, disobey authority, they are disobeying God. Two sins they are committing. They are disobeying God, and also they are disobeying the authority whom God has appointed. Some of the moral areas, when you disobey, you are only disobeying God. You are not disobeying anybody else. But here you are disobeying both. So it's so important, So a parents ought to know that they are exercising God's authority over the children. Children need to know that my parents are exercising God's authority over me. Elders need to recognize that, we are here to exercise God's authority over God's people. God's people need to recognize that these men are, ordained by God, they are delegated by God to exercise authority in my life. Wives need to recognize that the husbands are ordained by God to exercise authority over wife. And husbands ought to be very careful that I am exercising God's authority, so I am not my own authority. So I can exercise it only within the framework God has ordained. Otherwise it will be abuse of authority. Governments have to recognize that. So this is a whole big thing, God could do it himself, but God has made this arrangement. Delegation of authority. So we need to teach really in our churches and our family about authority. So when a person is disobeying the command, the legal command of a policeman, it's a violation against the authority of God, the arrangement of God. It's not very simple, You may not like it. The only time you can disobey is when he is not doing it as per the authority delegated. That's where you say, you have no authority to tell me in this matter. But God has not delegated that to you. You cannot tell me whether I should cook chapati or rice for breakfast. That's not something God has delegated to the policeman. Even if the government will make a rule like that, we won't obey that rule because they don't have the right to make a rule on that. So delegated people, they are very responsible to God. So delegation means the one to whom it is delegated, he does not have authority in himself. This is a key principle. I don't have authority over my children in myself. It is God's authority that I am exercising. So I have to be very careful in exercising God's authority, because if I go beyond, then I am misusing God's authority. God has not given me. So I just cannot spank the children until I please. I am satisfied. The authority is not given there for that. I can spank because God has given me the authority. So the Bible gives guidelines. How children ought to be spanked, how children ought to be corrected, how children ought to be taught, and all those things. I just cannot do what they want. The government has now banned using, sticks or corporal punishment is completely taken out, but the government is not given that authority. It's the parents' authority. Government is encroaching upon it. So what Christians will do? They still will exercise their God-given authority, and if the government wants to punish, government will punish. Because that's a principle. You don't question government's authority to punish you. but you don't obey those kinds of laws where the government does not have. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, they refused to bow down to the idols, but they did not fight against casting them into the fire. They cooperated. Okay, you do. But concerning the other one, God has not given you the right to decide whom should I worship. Therefore, your order will not be respected. But you have decided that anyone who disobey your order, you will cast them to fire. Go ahead, do it. I'm not going to resist that, but I'm going to resist this. So we need to know the nature of the delegated authorities and the extent of it. So here Paul is giving us some light in verse 2, says, whoever therefore resists the power, resists the ordinance of God. Anytime we are resisting an authority, even that authority is duly functioning, what are we doing? We are resisting the ordinance of God. And think of that. We resist the ordinance of God. How could we do that? We couldn't do that. We couldn't do. Now the BJP government has come. BJP government is brought to authority by whom? God. God. God has given the authority to them to rule in India. But the BJP government is not given authority in the areas of our spiritual matters, our relationship with God. If they go, they encroach upon that area and make rules saying that, no one should worship God on Sunday or no one should read Bible, then Christians will resist that. Because it is what they call, it is a law they made in an area where they had no authority. That authority was not delegated. But if anybody who reads the Bible will be put in jail, you cooperate. They want to handcuff, yes sir, go ahead, do it. That you are not going to resist. But the other one, I will read Bible. I will read Bible. Punishment, that you decide. I have not done anything wrong. It's an abuse of authority, that God will deal with you. That God will deal with. Our God is able to deal with that. That's where when God will change governments, and all that. Yes. So we should never be resisting the authorities established by God. Never. Whoever therefore resisteth the power, resist the ordinance of God. Says, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. That's a clear statement that you do it, you're going to be punished by God. God may ask even that very authority, you have disobeyed to punish you. God said, put him in jail for 5 years. Sometimes they hang him. The authority of God is exercised today through governments, through other people, other parties whom He has delegated. We should never be involved in disobeying duly appointed, authorities. We should respect them. We should teach our children the importance of this truth. Especially in Kerala, that. I don't know, in Mumbai, Kerala, the SFI and a few political student movements, they all encourage children to disobey government, throw stones to buses, challenge the police, attack the police station. It's a challenge. They are challenging God-appointed authorities. They are interfering. They are establishing a parallel government. And God has not allowed them. God does not have that sort of an arrangement. So we should tell our children that never get involved in any of those things, because you are going to be punished then by God. You are resisting God's ordinance. Those who resist shall receive to themselves damnation. That's very strong and clear statement. Look at verse 3. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Why God has delegated authority like this? The evil workers must be punished. The good workers must be protected. As long as you have not violated any law and you are doing good, you don't need to be afraid of the police. You don't need to be. You haven't violated anything. It's the thief who will run when he sees the police. We don't need to run away from the police. Of course, our police may stop us even though we haven't done anything to squeeze out some money from us. That's the abuse of the authority. So the rulers are not a terror to do good works. This is where one of the measures or one of the checkpoints to know where this particular administration is good or not. When a government becomes a terror to those who are practicing good, that government ceases to be operating according to the mandate of God. The police and the government must be a terror to those who practice evil, to the murderers and the adulterers and the thieves and the robbers and all those things. They must be a terror, they must be a terror. But when they become a terror to people who live righteously, soberly, obeying the laws of the land, innocent people are picked up, put in jail, they are beaten. Then that government ceased to be operating within the framework of God. Then you know that very soon that government will be removed by God. Either in the next election or God uses other ways. The rulers are never to be a terror to those who do good. Yes, they should be helping those doers of good. But now government sometimes is a terror, What the Christians are doing? They are not doing anything, anything illegal, unethical. They are quietly helping only people. But when the government become a terror only because you are a Christian, if the same thing you doing is done by somebody else, is a Sikh or a Parsi or a Hindu or Muslim, it's not wrong, but you do it, then it is wrong. Anybody can use the river for going and dipping and themselves and doing this puja, but if a Christian goes to have baptism, then it is all sorts of problems. All sorts of problems. Yes. If Christians meet in a home and pray, they can bring in all kinds of laws. But other prayer meetings and other religious activities going on, nothing. So when the government become a terror to those who practice good things, that government is violating, is abusing delegated power. Christians then and there can pray, God, this government has gone too far. The abuse of the law has come and you have to, yes, change it, or in God's ways you have to react, you have to interfere. So says the rulers are a terror to those who practice evil. Now that's another thing, an indication. Those who practice evil, are they terrorized by the government? Or are they helped by the government? The land mafias who grab all the government land. And all those people, they are comfortably carrying on their business. But somebody who wants to, do something good and legally right, they are given all kinds of troubles. So there is the abuse, because man is a sinner. This sort of abuse is going on. And we should never be afraid to raise our voice in a legal forum, about these abuses. Citizens forum, you could call it. In order, then I will continue. Yes. So in Romans chapter 13, it talks about the importance of the administration of law, how God or what arrangement God has made to administer the law. One thing we said in verse 1 is that it is commanded by God that authorities must be obeyed. Authorities must be obeyed. The reason for that one is all authorities are established by God. If it's a legal authority, there are illegal authorities. The mafia may have, the drug mafia may have their own authority structure. Anybody who does certain thing against their command will be shot. The mafias do that, but that's not an authority established by God. But all legal authorities are established by God. The power of God is behind it. The ordinance of God behind. Therefore, no one should disobey authority. We must all know that authorities are ordained by God, and therefore they are honorable institutions. They are honorable because God only has made this arrangement. Anybody who resists the authority, they are resisting the ordinance of God. They are really questioning the authority of God. That's very highly punishable. The word used is damnation. They shall receive damnation. Very serious crime. The third thing we said is, what is the purpose of government? The purpose of government are twofold. Number one, to safeguard the smooth functioning of those who are law-abiding, those who are doing good. Government should ensure that such people have the freedom to carry on the good works. Secondly, they should be a terror to those who are doing the wrong things. So whether a government is properly functioning or not, these two tests we can always employ. Are good people terrorized and bad people helped? Or good people are all safeguarded, protected, and they are able to carry on what they are doing? An average citizen, he is able to, live in his home comfortably with his wife, his children are able to go to school, he is able to go to work and earn the money. He can carry on all those things. The government makes all provisions for it, and you are saved. There is a day of Bandh or anything, government says, those who want to go to work, you can go, we will provide you all protection. We are here to enable you to go to. Students who want to go to school, they can go to school. But when the government is calling for a Bandh, then the government is terrorizing, My responsibilities I cannot carry on, my privileges I cannot enjoy. My rights I cannot enjoy. That's it's a terror. Government become a terror. Government is never to be a terror to good people, but to the bad people. So then asking a question, will thou then not be afraid of the power? Since this is the design, asking, will thou not be afraid of power? Yes, I'll be afraid of power. Because power is given by God to make smooth functioning of the society, smooth functioning, so that the life of the citizens will be made comfortable. As long as those citizens are doing ethical things, legal things, moral things, right things, governments are there to ensure that the bad elements in the society, the thieves and the thugs and the mafias, and they are all put to fear and they will stop their works. That's the purpose of the government. Then says, do that which is good, you shall have praise of the same. Governments are meant to praise those who are doing good things. Yes. Mother Teresa was doing good, so the government must give praise, due recognition. Those who are running orphanages, not for swindling money, using it as a cover up, no, genuinely caring for those who are running hospitals or other charitable institutions, those who are running school to help children. Anybody who is involved in doing good, not with the motivation or any selfish motivation, but as a charity, as a beneficial thing, as a benevolent thing, the government should be providing them the praise, the encouragement, the recognition that is needed. Now the thing is, in many places it's so difficult to get permission if somebody wanted to do some good works. But if somebody wanted to do some bad works, it's very easy to get permission. You give some bribery or something, you go and do it. It's a good people suffer usually. That means governments are not functioning properly. Verse 4 is very good. He is the minister of God to you for good. There are many kinds of ministers. There are ministers of God's word. Those who are preaching God's word and teaching God's word, they are one kind of ministers. But the policemen and the magistrate, they are also ministers. Actually, the title Reverend must be given to them. It should not be given to those who preach God's word. Because they have already the brother sister title is that's more than good, that's the best title. They are the ministers. They are doing a ministry, they are doing that work on behalf of God. They are serving God. They are serving God. So we should hold them very high, say that, oh, he is our minister, he is serving our God. He is serving our God. He himself may be atheist, but he is still serving our God. He may not know that, So that's a wonderful truth. Yes, he is a minister of God to you for good. But if you do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. God's sword is given into the hands of these authorities. There was a time when God used to cut off the heads of people. Even now he does. Through, natural calamities, earthquakes and tsunamis and all those things. But generally the evildoer is punished. The capital punishment, that's what the sword is always for, capital punishment. So God said that I have given my sword into the hands of these ministers so that they could swing it when it is necessary. The due process of law has to be carried out. Proper FIR and then investigations, then trials, and all those things have to be done, and case must be established, and then judgment must be given, it must be executed. The executioner of the capital punishment is a man who is a servant of God. മലയാളം മീൻസ് ആരാച്ചാരെന്ന് പറയില്ലേ, ആരാച്ചാരെന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ദൈവത്തിൻ്റെ ശുശ്രൂഷകനാണെന്നാണ് പറയുന്നത്. So these days people want to take away the sword God has given to people, say give it. We don't want you to use a sword. So our society suffer very much. No government can function without a sword. No government can function without a sword. How can they function? Because they have to be a terror to the evildoer. It is a sword that is a terror. It's a sword that is a terror. So we are given the warning. Be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil. God's wrath is executed through these ministers. In the spiritual area, no, usually it's more in the civil moral areas. The judicial, civil areas, the criminal procedure codes and the civil procedure codes and all that. Excommunication for some offense against, some principles is not done by the government. They are not the one. That the church will do. Verse 5 says, wherefore you must needs be subject not only for wrath but also for conscience sake. Because he is a servant of God, for conscience sake, because when you kneel down to pray, this is a charge against you. You have not obeyed my minister. How will I hear your prayer? When we stand at the pulpit to preach God's word, our conscience breaks. You have not obeyed my minister, you expect your people to obey you. What right do you have to speak to them? So we need, the conscience is very important. The greatest, our most valuable blessing of God, property that in us is our conscience. That little piece of instrument, they are so sensitive, at least meant to be sensitive, because there's callous conscience, talk about, and seared conscience. But otherwise it should be. So we need to subject and we need to obey, not only for wrath. If we disobey, the sword will swing. Even more than that, we should be concerned about the conscience. A child should obey the father more for the father's position than for the punishment he will get, വടിയെ പേടിച്ച് മാത്രം അപ്പനെ അനുസരിച്ച് ജീവിതകാലം ഒപ്പിഴ് നോക്കുമോ? Same with the government only. Even believers are more afraid about the punishment than for who they are. They are God's ministers. So then says, for this cause you pay tribute also, for they are God's ministers, attending continually upon this very thing. So we pay tax, the tributes, the customs and the duty, whatever is the income tax, the rule, this rule, that rule, sales tax rule, that rule, all because these ministers need to be supported. So we Christians should be we should pay honestly our taxes, because God's ministers need to be paid. A decent salary must be paid to all the police officers and all the judges and all, so that they don't have to take bribery. How decent you pay, more decently they will take those things. That's because they are not saved people, they are unsaved people, they are corrupt people, sinners. So, but there are moral people, unsaved moral people who won't touch. Yes. Verse 7 therefore is very important. Render therefore to all their dues. Tribute to whom tribute is due. Custom to whom custom. Fear to whom fear. Honor to whom honor. Believers must be very careful in paying what they ought to pay. Yes. It's a Christian's responsibility to ask for a bill where that is necessary. There are certain items you don't need to pay tax, but there are many items you have to pay what you call VAT, value added tax. So when you go to buy a coconut, you don't have to pay tax, but you buy coconut oil, you have to pay tax. It's value added product. Yes. So we need to. Respect has to be given to whom respect is due. Customs, duties, in taxes and all these things. There is a tendency on our part, including myself, I say that there is a tendency, not to pay as much as possible. That's our tendency, not to pay. Because we value money more than we value the ministers and their service. This is the reason. When we love money, we love to keep because we love money, right? But the Bible says that no, that's not the right attitude. We need to pay. Oh, no man anything but to love one another. It's not a verse against borrowing money, by the way. No, that's not talking about it. It's talking about that you should live in such a way that if tax is due, tax must be paid. Custom is due, custom must be paid. A salute is due, then a salute must be paid. That's what it is saying. You should not owe anything to anybody. I mean, nobody should say that you did not pay the tax, you should not show the respect. My father was, he was a teacher. The old teachers, the only benefit they have is the respect from the students. So after he retired, I was going to town with my father. He was very old. And a man passed him, maybe in his 50s. So he called him. Called his name, he said, come here. He came. You know me? Yes. Then Binandada Vandanam Paranjade. So he said, Sara Chamikana. So my father is old time. I said that a teacher must be respected. You are what you are because people like us. A teacher must be respected. Policeman must be respected. Judge must be respected. We must not owe anything to anybody. That's the principle. So we need to teach our children, not only children, we need to learn ourselves these things. The government, the law means the system of arrangement God has made so that our life is made smooth. It will function as it ought to be functioning. Law does not simply mean some statement of things. It's a spirit of law. The spirit of law is that this God's authority is delegated to man so that life will be smooth, good people will be helped, bad people will be stopped. To do that one, because they are continuous services, we have to pay continually what we ought to pay. So Bible says, do not owe any man, but you pay what you should. Says verse 9, for this thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet. And if there be any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended in this saying, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law. So what is he saying? That, all these commandments concerning, sanctity of life, therefore you should not kill. Sanctity of private property, there should not take anybody's. Sanctity of marriage, therefore you should not commit adultery. All these things, God has given, these rights and privileges in a sanctified way. We should not encroach upon it in any way. Nowhere. And governments are made to safeguard that every citizen will enjoy, He will enjoy his private property, rightly earned. He will enjoy his family life, man or woman, duly married. He will enjoy, ensure that his life, he lives a normal life as long as God has destined. Somebody doesn't come and kill him. All these things. And God has made rules and authorities to execute these things. So, Peter also said the same thing. Be subjected to authority. Interesting that when Peter wrote those words, who was ruling the world? Nero. A very cruel ruler who did not respect any ethics. But still what Peter said, obey. Paul said the same thing, obey. You don't look the character of the ruler. If he is the ruler, he is appointed by God. If he abuses and misuses authority and all, then God will deal with him. It's not for you. So we need to, understand this matter of the execution of the law very, very carefully, very, very carefully. Then only the smooth functioning. When we see Christians not obeying these things, that's very sad. When Christians don't pay taxes, when Christians don't respect authorities, and when Christians speak evil against and sabotage governments. No, we will not be blessed by that. We will not be blessed by that. We should be law-abiding citizens. We should be proud about the fact that, we are law-abiding. Our God is a good God. He has made arrangements. God will not allow us to suffer unjustly by any government for so long. There will be a period until God will do the correction, but God will do. So all the authorities in the world are delegated. Okay, if that is delegated, it bring to us the next great point. Who owns the absolute authority? God. That's very key. God is the only absolute legislature. God is the only absolute legislator. That means God has already made rules and laws. God has already made His laws. All these lawmakers in the world, what are they supposed to do? They are supposed to make laws on earth to execute God's law. The absolute ruler said, "Thou shalt not murder." Therefore, these delegated authorities must make rules that make sure that nobody murders anybody. If anybody murders, then that murder will be punished. When these delegated authorities begin to make laws that are contrary to the absolute law made by the absolute ruler, that's when these are unethical, illegal, draconian, laws. God does not want that. Hitler tried to do it, Mussolini tried to do it, maybe Mao tried to do it, Stalin tried to do it. Where are they? God not only removed them, but God removed the system they represented. The very system they represented. But God will not allow them very long. Very long. Why the other government, previous government was gone? Corruption. But so much corruption. Every newspaper, every day's report was about this, about that, Scam. Yes, scam. It's corruption. No government can exist with corruption going on like that. No, we cannot. The present government, if they will give a very clean, rule in that area, but also in the other areas, if they become a terror to the Christians and others who want to carry on a smooth, law-abiding life, they become a terror, then God will again act. Otherwise, God will bless and they may rule for years and years and years. We are commanded to pray for governments. So government's responsibility is not to make laws that are absolute in themselves, but to make sub-laws that will execute the absolute laws of God. For example, the Ten Commandments, they are the foundation of all laws. The Ten Commandments. No government should come and make laws that will violate the Ten Commandments. Now, thou shalt not kill. All governments have made laws that encourages killing. Killing a grown-up man is one thing, but killing a baby, a little, infant in the womb, who cannot defend against this brutality. So infanticide is an evil that the government should have never done. If population problem has to be controlled, there are other methods government should encourage. Government could say that the marriageable age of the girl should be from 18, could be made 22. And let the men instead of 21 make it 26. That 5 years gap is going to make a big difference. But why kill? Why kill? There is no law. God has said that a man has to marry at 18 or 19, right? So if the government say 25, 26, you may suffer a little bit. If that suffering is for the betterment of the nation, that's okay. But killing? Oh no. That's absolutely wrong. So they should not make, thou shalt not kill. Government should not make any law that makes honest people to lie. Sometimes it's very difficult, some people find that if they speak the truth, but in Malayalam we say that, Satyam Paranjal, Appan, Amme Tallum. Kallam Paranja, Appan Patiyarchi, Tunnu Thanne. That's the case. Veji vechirikkunna pattiyani. Satyam Paranjal, Ammekadi ullu patti vechina. Kallam Paranjal, idu aadanu Paranjal, Appan patti thunnu cheyum. So there are situations where, government will make sometimes situations where, many people find it's difficult to speak the truth. But the Bible says you shall not lie. Do Christians have an option to speak lie? No, never. So government must make laws that will always enable people to speak truth. That's what it should be. Many of the rules of the government are, supporting people who will say lies. That's the problem. So anybody commit any sort of violations or no violations, the immediate answer from the mouth of the person will be, sir, no sir, I haven't done it. Government has established he has done it. So his lawyer will be, what pleading? Government says that anybody before court, they will come and confess their sins, the punishment will be much less. It's like in some homes that's a rule that if children will make mistakes before they are caught, if they come themselves and say, Mommy, I have broken that glass, or I have done this one, you told me not to go there, but I went there, so no punishment, because they came and, that's an encouragement to confess the mistake. But here it is, you go and confess to government something you have done. It's very, very difficult. Once I was traveling, I was seeing a friend of mine off, a couple at the railway station, and as the train was almost ready to come, 5-10 minutes only there, and my friend's wife found a whole bunch of notes on the railway, on the platform. So she picked it up and gave it to me. Brother, this is, I don't know how many, 8,000 rupees or 10,000 rupees, some poor man. So I knew it's trouble, but I thought I will go to the station master's place and at least tell him that some money is available for something. He doesn't want to listen. You go away, that's not my job. My job is running the train, not listening to this. I wonder why he was. He was very angry. Then he said, go to the police station. So I went to the police station, railway police station there, and before, by God's grace, nobody was there, no policeman, nobody. I waited there 5 minutes and came back by the time the train. Then I went back to the station master's office. The assistant superintendent was there. He said, sir, you are getting into trouble. You go to the policeman will, immediately they will make an announcement that somebody lost, and they say that somebody will come say the 1 lakh rupees I lost. So you got only 80,000, where are the 92,000 rupees? So police will give that, baki cash, niye nallavum yave mandiri kale, 90,000 nee eduthittu. Said that, then there will be a case. So said that, and one of the porters came and said, Sare, Satyasandharaya Manjari Pudum, Kodhi Gari Hanganaka. So give it to somebody. So I gave the money to them, said you go to Andhra Pradesh, if there are some poor people you give to them. So they went there, gave to some orphanage and told me that, I said that's between you and the Lord. So what he said, a truthful person who wanted to find the honor, he cannot do it because our system is, legal system is such that you get into trouble. This is a sad thing. Maybe some poor man lost the money, maybe borrowed money for some education of his children or something, So our system should not be like that. System should not be like that. Somebody who brings that money, there should not be a system where he is accused of, robbing somebody and this and that and that. It's very difficult. So when God says, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not lie, the government must be the law-making agency, the legislature, whoever it is, sometimes the court, it depends upon what kind of constitution you have. The law-making agencies must be making laws to safeguard honest citizens of this country, so that a person is able to speak the truth. Nobody should be punished for speaking the truth. Sometimes then people have to say the lie to escape. Governments cannot continue to operate like that. So God is the only absolute legislature. Every rulers and every legislative bodies, they are delegated. Their duty is to make sub-laws that on human realm will be able to execute these absolute rules. That's what it is. God only gives the broad rules. Then man has to make sub-rules that will make that absolute rule in the day-to-day execution. And man is accountable to God. How he does it? Because God demands. Delegation, one of the principle of delegation is, anytime an authority is delegated, a job is delegated, how that person does that one, he has to give an account. The Lord in many of the parables said that the king gave talents to different people, went away. When he came back, he called them and said, give me an account. It's my money, I gave into your hand to deal it. I need an account how you dealt that money. So these people, the governments, they are given God's authority, portion of God's authority to execute these things. God demands them, tell me, how did you do it? Whether have you interfered in the spiritual areas? Have you interfered in the family life? Have you made any laws that made people impossible to, ethically operate? And all those things. God asked them. Income tax and sales tax, some people say income tax rules are so much that sometimes people, you make 1 lakh, but now income tax levels are gone. This government is going to bring it up to 5 lakhs, I heard. Well, for good or for bad, in a poor country like this, that's a different matter, but whatever it is, But someday before it was, government takes away more than half of what you have. I could never understand why they made law. You pay income tax, right? You pay 30% to government. The other 70% is yours. With that one, you went and bought some cement, you have to pay tax over there. With that one, you build a building, then you have to pay tax on building. So what is it? When you divide and all that, you don't get anything, even not 10% you don't get it. Everything. It's a tax paid, my clear money. I buy shirt with it. Do I have to pay tax again on it? So what government is doing is, with their right hand they give you money, with the left hand they take it all away. So people have learned how not to give
back.
That's what it is. People have learned not to give. So they will falsify this account, that account, and all these things. Business people know how not to give. Income tax people, they know how to squeeze out. But these business people know how not to, give it out. And so there is a continuous, fight between the departments. And this should not be there. The rules must be made very, very simple. I like the Gulf countries. No income tax, no sales tax, nothing. Now they begin to bring that there. They say they need, but basically they never had anything. You go to Gulf, Dubai, you can buy anything, no sales tax, no income tax, nothing. What you make is yours. Government gets money through many other methods.
Our country is one of the most largest paying taxes in the world.
One of the
the highest paying taxes in the world. And
What?
they are famous for it.
Okay. There are average citizens' life should be safeguarded. Government should not be a terror to those who do good. Government should be a help in doing good. That's what government should be. So we need to educate people sometimes, I mean, in a country where Christianity is a minority, I mean, believers are such a minority, whether we have time to go get involved in politics or we don't have even time to get involved in the spiritual things. But in a country like a Christian country, so-called Christian country, these principles must be. But in those Christian countries also these principles are not followed. It's very difficult. So absolute legislature is God, sub-legislatures are the governments. Whether it's municipality, whether it's state government, whether it's panchayat, whoever may be, whatever law they make, those laws should not contradict or abrogate the absolute laws God has made. And in the areas of religion, family, those areas the government should not make only laws that will guarantee the smooth functioning, should not be interfering. The sad thing is anti-conversion law. Why should government make anti-conversion law? You could be a communist, or you could be a Congress, or you could be an RSS, but you cannot be a Hindu or a Christian or a Muslim. In any political system you can change, but in your faith you cannot change. Why? If you are convinced that Jesus Christ is the true God, you cannot believe in Him. Why religion has to be thrust upon him by birth? A child is not born with any religion. The Bible's language, that which is born from the flesh is flesh. You walk into the hospital, you see all the kind of in the maternity ward you go, there are so many children are there. Can you look at the children only without seeing the parents and say this is a Hindu child? You cannot. Why you make the child Hindu? Let the child grow. You teach whatever you want, that's fine. But never say you don't have the freedom to believe what is right. That's wrong. Governments don't have that rule. Especially when our Lord Jesus Christ, the absolute ruler, said, go into all the world and preach this gospel. Government should not make it. Any government, therefore, that will bring that sort of rules, the government is going to suffer. System, definitely. So any system or systems that deny God's absolute legislative power or position will fail, and people will suffer under those rulers. Yes. Muslim countries, there was a time they were fighting against non-Muslims, but they're killing each other now. Look everywhere. They're killing each other. Why? Because this is bound to happen. It's bound to happen. You begin to hate other religions, and then other religions cannot function there. The hatred is still there. Then you will channel all your hatred against your own people on some minor difference. That's what it is. On some minor difference. The freedom God had given to know the truth, and the truth will make you free. The person must be free to listen to understand, and to make decisions on that. Government should not interfere. So governments fail because they do not acknowledge the dignity or the absolute authority of God on one hand. On the other hand, the dignity of man created in the image of God. When governments acknowledge that man is created in the image of God and therefore there is certain amount of dignity to man, that dignity government cannot interfere, should not do anything. Don't treat man like animals. Man should be treated like, human beings created in the image of God. See our jail system. They are treating not human beings as human beings. Animals are better there. The police dog, holds a higher position than a man there, No, I'm not saying they should be treated, they're criminals, they must be treated criminals, but they should not be treated subhuman. And that sort of treatment, all these things come because of that, How police, deal with people in these jails, the abuses, the American, the Guatemala, all those stories, everybody knows it. How much brutality, psychological terror, physical violence beyond imagination. Why? But this is a human being. If he has done a crime that is worthy for death, then capital punishment. Give him the punishment with dignity, let him die with dignity. He should not be abused. So all these things, this is all happens because governments do not recognize certain basic truths. Why this happened? Because of evolution, because of communism, systems that deny the existence of God. When man is only an animal evolved, then you will treat him as an evolved animal. It is one animal dealing with another animal. That's what it is. But a lion catching a deer, that lion will not do any unnecessary abuse. It will catch there and as soon as possible silently cause the death. It will never take pride in causing pain to that animal unnecessarily. It's only man. It's only man. So when man believes that he is an evolved being, then it's one animal treating another animal. But when we believe that man is created in the image of God and every man is created, then when I deal with a man, I'll be very careful. That's what James says. You cannot curse a man created in the image of God and then turn and worship God, the Creator. That's got inconsistent. If you really believe that God created man in His image, then while after worshipping God, you cannot curse this man because you are cursing one who is created in the image of God. No, you cannot. It is like, you will praise Mahatma Gandhi, turn around and see his picture there, spit on it. You respect Mahatma Gandhi, but you abuse his image. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So the failure of man, in our legal system, the failure is because we do not accept the absolute, authority and the absolute legislature. God is the absolute legislator who made those rules. When we refuse to accept them, we do all these problems. Since God exists and legislates, any society that ignores God's person and God's authority, they will be stepping out of the realm of reality. You look at such nations, marriage failed, social failures in every political, authorities fail. They are not only marriage, system, divorces come, abortions come, and all these things. Talk about euthanasia and all these things. Why we talk about all these things? We lost respect for man. That's why we talk about all these things. In a decent society, you won't talk about killing people. You will be talking about saving people. That's what we will be. So as long as we believe that The authorities on the earth are delegated, and the absolute authority rests in the absolute person, and that is God. And God has already made absolute rules and regulations, and all delegated legislatures and authorities, they can only make sub-laws so that God's absolute rule will be smoothly carried out on the human realm. That's where our governments will exist nicely. Oh, when will that come? When such a system will come? Even among the Jewish people, they, from time to time, some of the rulers abused, but good rulers always, what God said, they will go to the Bible and they will read the Bible passage, and the law will be that. That should be our system also. John Calvin tried to execute that in Switzerland, in Geneva. Yes. Yes, Calvin's church. And that some people have problem with that. Because they wanted to execute the biblical laws, especially some of the Old Testament law and all that. So any state that ignores God's will and promote arbitrary laws, causing great suffering for people, they will lose the respect of the people. In democracy, those government will be removed by people in the next election. Today, most of the nations have democracy. That's what happens. So democracy can exist only by pleasing the people. To please the people, the first and the foremost thing is safeguarding a smooth, peaceful life atmosphere. So every law must be there to support life. The personal freedom, the family freedom, the religious freedom, and all these things will be safeguarded. Government should not make laws contrary to those. When fundamental principles of law are undermined, public confidence in law and public willingness to obey the law will be lost. People rebel because fundamental principles of the law are. What's the fundamental principle? Law is to prevent evil and to promote goodness. That's a fundamental principle. And that fundamental principle is absolute law is made by God, and on the human realm it is delegated. Therefore we only make sub-laws in harmony with the absolute law. And the intention is to make life more easy and more comfortable for those who wanted to obey the law and do good. And law should be a terror for others who violate it. So this is very, very important, very, very important. This is the basic premises of the law. If the lawgivers don't respect this, then, definitely there will be problem. Now, you may have some questions. I may stop there simply because my notes finished. You have any questions on what I said? What's the nature of law? What is the purpose of law?
Not directly
Yeah.
regarding this one. What is the role of the lawyers? Because, can a lawyer be completely honest and
Yes. Lawyers can be completely honest and true in a system that operates completely honestly and truthfully. But among all professions, the legal profession is the most truthful profession, they say. Because 50% of the truth will be there. One will be saying he killed, the other says that he didn't kill. One of the two is true. So one of the lawyer will be speaking truth. No, I think our system, this is the problem. A lawyer should never defend a wrongdoer. Never. The lawyer should be, a murderer comes and confess before the lawyer that I have committed murder. These are the situations. Then the lawyer's duty is to bring the minimum punishment that is allowed by law in a situation, taking into consideration about, maybe his age, the first offender, maybe he was provoked to do it, or maybe his presence is needed by the old mother, and there's many factors. But the lawyer should never say that my party did not do the killing. No, say that, yes, he did it. So I believe that's what it should be. The criminal lawyers are not doing it, they're just doing just the opposite of it. The civil lawyers have no problem. They usually based upon with the land, deeds and rights and all those things. They will have a constitutional lawyers and maybe immigration lawyers and the passport or the visa. These things they don't have it to falsify. But a criminal law is terrible. It's terrible. Who is a good criminal lawyer? One who can prove the murderer is not a murderer. That's what it is. That's terrible. So legal system, our whole system is corrupt. Our whole system is corrupt. I'm not speaking against any particular judge, but even there was a time when the judges were, Supreme Court judges or High Court judges, they could never be bribed or bought. That question was out. But today we hear about scandals of Supreme Court and High Court judges taking bribery, amassing money, unethically and all these things. So in a system like that, how can we expect the lawyers to be? And the large amount of money they make, lawyers, how much money they take. Good lawyers in Supreme Court, they charge up to 1 lakh rupees, 1 and 2 lakhs rupees for just 1 hour. That's their fees. It's more than that. Yeah. It depends upon, the huge amounts, huge amount. So by the time a good case will be there, they will be charged at least for 10-15 hours, fees and all that. It's a lot of money they're taking. If they are do it honestly, they won't be paid for it. Because you never pay very high for speaking the truth. It is all for laundering the, black money. The same way the black case. You want to launder it and make it the white case. So, maybe in the millennium, I don't know whether there will be lawyers in the millennium. I do not know. But if there are lawyers in the millennium, the lawyers will be saying to them, yes, my client has committed it. This is the situation, Well, he was provoked. He had this temperamental problem. He is guilty. But in the given situation, not the maximum punishment law demands for that case, but the minimum punishment must be given. Yes. That sort of, it will be a miracle if a lawyer in our system will come. I think that there was was it Mahatma Gandhi? Somebody was there. When a criminal comes, he tried to reform the criminal. I read about some lawyer who will say that, you have committed, you are this, you have no right to get justice, so you admit, I will get you the minimum punishment, try to get it, But if such a situation really existed, then it's a rare incident. Because that lawyer won't get any case. Yes. Forget about the law. When some believers in the church does something wrong and we try to correct him, how to get the truth out of him. Very seldom people will come and say, brother, I have done it, I'm sorry. They usually say, no. If they try to say that, then you bring out the evidences. That's the first question. You got any evidence for it? So if believers will admit only their mistake when the evidences are there, what do you expect from the unbelievers, and who doesn't even believe in God. So this is the problem. It's really a problem. Any other question?
But then how to reform the system?
Well, you
Is it
talk about
reformable?
it's not easily reformable. No, it's not easily. One of the advantages of a monarchy was the monarchical systems. These things could be more reformable. In democracy, it's very difficult because the ruler is representing the people. So how can a righteous person represent bunch of thieves? Who are the people who elect them? See, we sometimes say that criminals are becoming elected and all. Well, criminals are elected because criminals are voting. That's the reason. So our system cannot get the best of people. So democracy is very difficult. In monarchy and all that, oligarchy and all that, it's more possible because it is one man's will, basically, that's going to be. So if he's a clean administrator and he can say that, it's very severe punishment for anybody who is involved in this sort of thing, people will tend to slowly change. But that monarch is coming. He is coming. The day is coming.